Okay, we're going to be doing slope right now for, this is 1.1 notes. So when we talk about the slope, we want to talk about the rise over the run. And that means that's just your change in y over change in x, okay? Change in y over the change in x. Another word for slope is also the rate of change. Asking about the rate of change, it's always going to be the slope. You usually hear rate of change more than you would say it, let's find the slope. So just getting used to the terminology is the best thing for you. And then we have the formula. M equals y2 minus y1 over x of 2 minus x1. Okay, so let's use our formula to determine this. Sometimes you get to look at a graph, but for this one, we're going to look at the slope, at points. So I have 2 points here. I'm going to label these points. Here's going to be x1, and here's y1, x2, y2. Sometimes you want to write it to kind of keep track of it, make sure that you write in the same way you're supposed to. We don't mess ourselves up. So 5m equals, and again, these have to be memorized, so rewriting them over and over will help you. For most people, most time it will for all. Just keep doing it over and over. All right, and so now we're going to just put our numbers in. So y2 is an 8, y1 is a 4, and then x2 is a 6, and then x1 is a -3. So this is a minus -3. So if you're going to make the mistake, put it in parentheses, okay? And then change the signs. Minus and negative is a positive. So that leaves me with 4 over 9. So this slope is 4/9. Or note real quick before I forget, reduce all fractions. Okay. All right, for this next one, we have the slope. Again, I'm going to next this x1, y1, x2, y2, my formula. All right, so I am going to substitute 5 minus 5, and then I have a -6 minus 3. So now I have a 0 over a -9. Now, this is where you can talk about reducing the fraction. You don't leave it 0 over -9. 0 divided by -9 is just 0. So your slope here is 0. If for some reason you can't remember which is which because you don't get a calculator most of the time on these, think about I'm dividing by number, being 0 divided by number. That might help. Putting your calculator over and over and over. I know you can't use them on the test sometimes or the quizzes, but it'll practice it and you'll see it over and over this way. You're like, okay, that means I have a 0, okay? And you have to put it as 0. You don't get to leave it 0 over -9. The next one, here we have -2 and 8, and then -2, 4. So hopefully you're recognizing something, that you see something that is that you see that's happening when you look at these. I'll talk about it as soon as I do this problem. So again, all right, so this is going to give me, I'm going to do 4 minus 8 over -2 minus a -2. Okay, so again, those are going to be a plus here. So that's going to leave me with a -4 over 0. Now, -4 over 0 is not an answer. If I divide by 0, I say the words I'm dividing by 0, that means it's undefined, okay? We don't say none, we say undefined. So make sure that, remember, those are undefined. But this is a slope. Hopefully, and we'll talk a little bit more about it as we go, is that you notice these right here. So here we had the 5's the same. On this one, we had the -2's the same. So sometimes that kind of helps us with what we're doing and going from there. We always have the formulas to help us always, so that's one thing that's nice. If you forget which one it is and how it works that way, you always have a formula to fall back on. All right, So now let's look at a graph. That's using the slope formula. And here we're going to just look at the graph. Remember, when you look at a graph, you're just going to look at points that are what I call pretty points. And they're not always going to be that way, but they have to be pretty points, like if it goes like to halves and halves or to hole and a hole, you got to be able to see it. One thing nice about this one is that we actually do have halves, okay? Excuse me, holes. So I look for pretty points. And again, it doesn't matter where you go. I see a pretty point here, okay? And then I see the next one is here. If you didn't choose this one, you can go up to the next pretty point. That's one. So it doesn't matter what you do. You're going to get the same answer and so forth. So it's always got to reduce. So if I look at this first one, so if I look at the graph itself, it is a sloping from, it's going down from left to right. So that's going to be a negative slope, okay? So as your x gets larger, the line's going down as it goes. So as your x gets larger, that line is going down that direction. So with this one, we're just going to do, okay, so it's meant rise or run. So remember, you want to pick, and I'm going to say kind of pick 2 exact points for this part, but 2.5 and 3.5 are 2 exact points that you can see. Sometimes we have to guess. 2 exact points, or I call them pretty points, okay? So if I look at this one and I'm thinking about it, so if I go this way, if I rise, because it's always the rise over the run, I want to think it that way to make it easier to make sure I go. So if I rise this way, that's a positive thing because I'm going up, okay? So that's a positive thing. So I went up 1, okay? And I'm going to go to the left this way. So I went 1, 2, 3, but that's a negative way. So we went up 1 and to the left 3. So my slope is -1/3. Know that if it's written that way, you're probably more than likely going to see it this way, okay? Most people see it more with the negative on top there. It doesn't matter, it's the same thing, okay? So that's that slope. Okay, okay, so now let's look at the next one. Now, you can look at it. Hopefully you can look at the line at this point. When you get farther along, we can look at the line and so forth. But let's just look at it this way if we're just going to look at 2 points and we're not too sure what to do about it. If I pick 2 points on here, again, I want to pick some nice ones. So I'm going to pick this one and I'm going to pick, oh no, this one over here. Okay. Now, remember, it's rise over the run. The slope is rise over the run. My thing is am I rising anywhere? Okay. No, I'm not rising anywhere. All right. So I'm rising from not going anywhere. It's a 0. But here, if I even think I'm going over, if we want to finish it, that's the rise. But when I run, based on what I did, I got 1, 2, 3. So, and it doesn't matter which direction I go. So I happen to go to the this way. So that's a positive thing for me. So it's a positive. I put a +3 there because I run that way. I went that direction. But 0 divided by 3, though, is just 0. Okay? Remember, these are kind of vertical lines and so forth. You could pick 2 points. Sorry, I didn't mean to say vertical. This is a horizontal line. So you can hopefully remember that horizontal lines have these type of slopes where m is 0. Okay? So let's look at the next one. Again, we're going to do the same idea, but this time we're going to think about just picking 2 points. So if I pick, say I like to go here, and let's say I went way up here. Okay. So again, slope is the rise over your run. Okay, so I'm going to rise what? I'm going to go from here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going up, so that's positive. So I went up 4. But I don't get to go left or right on this graph. So I didn't go anywhere. So it's 4 over 0 for this one. Okay? It doesn't matter which point, how far up you go, or even go down, it's still not going anywhere left or right. So this is when my slope is undefined. I'm dividing by 0. So when you look at this graph, and you see that, and again, pay attention to the kind of line it's going. What's the kind of line it's doing? What's the line look like compared to the ones, if you're looking at different ones? If you look at number 4 compared to 5 and 6, there's something different about it, what type of lines they are, okay? So, and again, these are horizontal lines. These are vertical. And that makes a difference on what our type of grass. We have horizontal lines, they have slope of 0. Vertical lines have an undefined slope. All right, let's go on to parallel and perpendicular lines. Okay, parallel lines have slopes that are the same. I usually talk about 2 lines, so I always do something like the first one, line 1, so I put a 1, is the, so I don't know why I wrote that, or the same slope. Sorry, I apologize. They're just the same. Redundant with my words. So this means M1, the slope of one line is equal to the slope of the other one if they're parallel. Okay? Perpendicular lines have slopes that are negative, which just means the opposite sign, whatever it is, positive, negative, negative is positive, negative reciprocals. Okay? So for those, this just means we're going to flip it over. Okay? So on this one, when we look at it, we have, I'm going to do this one. So my line 1, the slope of line 1 is going to be, since this one, M1 is positive, it has to be the opposite, which is going to be negative for this one, 1 over M2. So kind of remind ourselves, examples of reciprocal, just to make sure that we remember what they mean. So reciprocal, if I have, so examples of reciprocals. So, did I spell that wrong? I think I did. Yep, hold on, let me delete. Reciprocals, here we go. So if I have a 4, okay, that's going to change, and it's not equal to, the reciprocal of that would be 1/4. Okay. If I have, and I'm just talking about reciprocals, so I just want to make sure you understand we're just flipping the sign over, not looking at that. Negative reciprocals means I take the opposite. So that's just a reciprocal. So what we want to do on this one is determine if the following lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So in order to know anything about that, you must find slope. Okay, so how I usually do this is I will just say, so for line 1, which is this one here, so for my slope 1, I'm going to use my slope formula. So I'm going to do -1 minus the 2, and then I'm going to do 0 minus a -2. So again, that changes this to a plus. So my slope is -3 over 2. That's for this one. Now for line 2, that's a different one. So for line 2, I call it M with the 2 down here so I don't get confused. So again, I'm going to do 2 minus a -4. So 2 minus a -4 divided by 3 minus a -1. So that gives me, again, this is a plus because it's 2 minus negative. So that gives me a 6 on top. And this is a plus, which gives me a 4. Reduce your fraction. Always reduce, and that reduces to 3/2. Now, the numbers are opposite signs, but in order for them to be parallel, they have to be exactly the same. Well, -3/2 is not the same as 3/2. So for them to be perpendicular, that means -3/2. If I look at this one, the reciprocal of -3/2 is 2/3. Well, this is not even close to being 2/3, okay? So it would have to be a negative 2/3 and do it. So my solution, my answer would be neither. Now you have to answer neither, one of these three, and this is what the answer you want. This is the work to support it. All that's your work to support it, but you must also answer that, okay? So again, make sure I said this right. These two, this is a negative 3/2, this is 3/2, okay? Like I said, the signs are opposite, but it's not the reciprocal. Of that first slope. Okay. All right. Okay, so the next page is talking about slope-intercept form. So from here on out, we're pretty much going and this part, slope-intercept form, we're going to do a lot with point-slope form. So all this is about trying to graph the line, equation of a line, or just writing the equation of a line and all the parts that we need. So if you have slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, if you remember the formula, remember this is your slope and b is your y-intercept. Where do I cross the y-axis? That's b, okay? So this is of a line, it's the easiest to use for graphing a line or writing an equation of a line. If you have a graph, it's also easier to use that to help us to write the equation based on the graph as well, as long as you're given the slope and the y-intercept, okay? So what you want to do first is you want to plot your y-intercept. So if you're graphing, plot the y-intercept, okay? Then apply the slope. Then apply slope from there. Now remember, another thing to kind of remember is that if you are going left or down, you're doing a negative thing. Okay, it's negative. I like to put parentheses, I remember this. If you are going right or up, that means you have a positive thing. Okay, it means the number is positive, so forth. Okay, so we're going to look at this equation. We're going to talk about each one. We're going to graph it and identify the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to look at this. My equation is y equals mx plus b. So if I write that above here, okay, so I have a slope. I see my slope is a -2. But if I look at the b, it's not there. But I can write it if I do a +0, then I have it. So then therefore my slope would be 0. Excuse me, sorry. My y-intercept would be 0. Okay. So when I go to graph it, so you're going to plot the y-intercept, well, 0. And remember, y-intercepts are points. I know when we do it on here, we just put the number. I'm talking to you as we go along. If you write this as a point, it's easier for you to plot, make sure you're plotting at the right place. So 0, 0 is where that is. And then I'm going to go and do the -2. So, okay, so I'm going to look at the slope, and I have -2. But when I plot the slope, I usually rise over run. So note that you can rewrite the slope if you need to. You can write -2/1, or you can do +2 over -1. Either way, it's going to work. It just depends which way you go. This is a negative slope, so we got to make sure that line is going. One of these has to be a negative direct. One of these, top or bottom, one of them has to be negative. So if I just choose this one, I'm going to start at this point. I'm going to go up 2 because I did a +2, up 2, and then I'm going to go this way 1. So I'm going to have a new point right here. Again, I'm going to start this point, and I'm going to use this one, so I can go down 2, and then over 1, okay? All right, so this is where I start. Let me make it back, okay? So now if I connect all these 3 dots, these points, I'm very typical lines. When you take a quiz or a test, I'll give you a ruler, but you need to make sure that you draw those straight. On here, I'm not able to do that because it's not notability. So there's my line, okay? All right, let's look at the next one. I have a slope of, so whatever in front of here is my slope, so that's a 1, and my y-intercept is a -2. Plot the y-intercept, so again, if I write this, so when you are writing the b, we're going to write it as a point, and so that's going to be at 0, -2 is the point, okay? Remember, that b is where I cross the y-intercept. So I can plot point 0, -2. Now this is a positive slope, so I'm just going to go up 1 over 1, okay? So go up 1 over 1, and we wind up here, go down 1. This one, since it's kind of close, you might want to do a few lines to see if you can get a better idea what the line looks like. And then draw a straight line. Okay, let's try the next one. Now the next one, what you want to look at, does this look like y equals mx plus b? Okay, I see the y, but I don't see this. I don't see an x, and there's not a number there. So remember, these are different, certain kind of lines. So remember, this is where it's telling you to cross the y-intercept. When y equals 3, that's where it's telling you to cross the y-intercept. So you're actually, that is 3, okay? And again, that point would be 0, 3. So you know what, 0, 3, if I plot that point, 1, 2, 3, and it's here, okay? And it's just this type of line. And these type of lines, when it's y equals, I talked about earlier, these are all horizontal lines, okay? So, a little note. So y is 3 at every point. So what I mean by that is because y equals 3, it cannot change. So when I'm looking at something like this, y is going to be 3. For every point I do, it's going to look like that, no matter what I pick. And you can pick several numbers to put in there and plot those points, and then you'll see what kind of line it is. Also, these are horizontal lines. Okay, so if it's a horizontal line and it's crossing the y-axis at 3, it has to go in this direction. It has no choice. Okay, so now what kind of slope is that? Well, when we look at the line, it's a slope of 0. Horizontal lines have slope of 0, so you have to put a 0 there. Okay. All right, let's look at this next one. I'm not in slope-intercept form, so I would have to put it in slope-intercept form in order to use it to graph. So put in slope-intercept. Form, which is just your y equals mx plus b. So let me move this over here, and let's solve for, okay, so I have 3x plus 2y equals 10. Subtract 3x. I get 2y equals a -3x plus 10. Divide by 2. Divide everything by 2. So y equals -3 x. It's hard to see that 3. Let me write that better. -3 x. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Okay, so my y-intercept is 5. So again, that point would be 0, 5. I'm going to plot that, which is way up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, my slope, though, is -3. So it's negative, okay? So we have to make one go left or right, and depending on which you go, make one go the opposite way, your rise or your run. Since it's way up here, I'm going to have to go down Okay, so I'm going to go down 3. So down 1, 2, 3. I wind up here. Oops, I don't mean to. And then it's right there. And then I'm going to go to the, so since I went down, that's negative. So then I'm going to go 1, 2 this way. So I wind up at this point right here. I'm going to do it again. Down 3, 1, 2, 3, and then over 1, 2, and I wind up that way. Try and draw as much as you can of the line so you can get it through there. When you draw again, just because you don't use all like really straight points with it, you want to make sure that you are going to be straight with your, and it goes to the right values on your graph. All right. Okay, we're going to talk about x and y intercepts. The first thing I want you to tell you, when you write these answers, they are always to be written as points. So whatever you need to help to remind yourself, write as a point. I will take off points on your test, on your quiz, if you do not write them as points, okay? Write as a point. So when we talk about finding the x-intercept, okay, that is just where the graph crosses the x-axis, okay? When it's a point, it looks like this. It's going to look like whatever x value that is, comma 0, okay? So remember, this means where the graph crosses the x-axis, okay? We'll talk about more of this later, but depending on what you have for a function, if you have depending on the function, you may have more than one x-intercept, okay? So how do you find this? So the first thing you want to do when you go to find these is you are going to let y equal 0. So okay, plug 0. And let me write that. I want to write that as a word. Plug 0 in for y. And then solve for x. Okay. Okay. Next one is when we're going to look at the y-intercepts. This time, this is when it's 0, comma y. And this is where we've been doing the y-intercepts with the slope-intercept form, but where the graph crosses the y-axis. Okay, how do we find it? How to find, plug 0 in for x, and then solve for y. Okay, again, these all have to be written for as points. With the y-intercept, functions only have one y-intercept. Okay, only one. Probably come back and revisit that in another when we talk about functions. Okay, so we're going to find the x and y-intercepts of the following. This is, again, just doing what we do. I just kind of do one at a time. So if I do the x-intercept, I'm going to let y equal 0. So what I'm going to do is I have x minus 2, and in place of the y, I'm going to put a 0. Now I'm showing you a lot of this for reference, making sure that you understand how you do this, and it equals 4. Okay, and now I solve. So I know 2 times 0 is 0, so x equals 4. So my final answer, though, is when I write it as a point, 4, comma 0. Okay? So now we're going to let, the next one, we're going to find the y-intercept. So I'm going to let x equal 0. So I'm going to write my equation down, same equation. So in place of the x, I'm going to have a 0 minus 2y equals 4. So negative 2y equals 4. Divide by a negative 2. Y equals negative 2. Okay, and so again, write it as a point. So it's going to be 0, comma, negative 2. Okay. Now, some of these times I won't show all these steps, so I'm just going to do this next one. For example, we're going to find the x-intercept first. Okay. So we're going to do 3x plus 5 times 0 equals negative 15. And some of y'all can just see that goes away, and you might be able to say 3x equals negative 15 and see that x, but if you need to write this next step, I would, x equals negative 5. My final point, though, is here's negative 5, 0. Y-intercept. So we're going to set this equal to 0, so this is 3 times 0. That goes away, but we're still got the plus 5y equals negative 15. Some of y'all may be able to see right here what y is, but if you're not sure, just kind of clean up your equation there, combine like terms and all that stuff, and divide by 5, so y equals negative 3. So now we have 0, negative 3. Again, this is your final answer. These points are the final answer when you get done, okay? These are your final answers for these. Again, you will get points taken off and so forth, but the thing is that you've got to be able to recognize that we're usually given answers or values like this, and you got to understand what it looks like. All right, so again, we're going to talk about graphing equations. Writing equations in a line. We have two types of lines. We have slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. We use the slope, which is m, and the y-intercept of b, which is b. Okay. Now the other one that we use, and you use this quite a bit, is their point-slope formula. So with the point-slope formula, what's nice about it is if you have points, 2 points, you can use this and find your equation line. A point and a slope, you can use this. All right. Again, we're going to use slope, okay, which is your m. And then we're going to use any point on the line. And that's where you see that x1 and your comma y1, okay? All right. These two right here, you always need the slope for everything you do on here. Need for both, okay? We're always going to need those two. Okay. And when you do this, one thing that when you get done with this, when you write your equation, x and y should be left alone as a variable, and then everything should be filled in with a number. So I'm just going to write that. Let's see. X and y remain variables. Okay. Everything else is filled in with a number. Everything else is filled in. The number. Okay, so write an equation line that has passes through the point. Here's a point, and that so that'll be our x1, our y1. It's our point, and has a slope of 4. So that means I have m equals 4. Okay, I do not have the slope-intercept, so I will not use slope-intercept form. I'm going to use the point slope formula, okay? So when I write my formula out, you have to have this memorized, so I'd write it over and over, like I was saying with the slope formula, and we're going to fill in what we have. Okay, so I have a -1 and a 6 as my point, so I replace x1 and y1 only, so I have y minus the 6, and my slope is 4, and then x minus a -1, so that's going to be a positive 1. So don't forget, minus, if you need to put that in parentheses, plus, plus. So again, you're going to clean that up. You're not going to leave it like that. Now, it did not ask you to put in point slope. Sorry, it did not ask you to put it in slope intercept form. So we're going to leave it like this. This is an okay answer, okay? All right. So in this one, I had to find slope and then write the equation. Always have to find the slope. All right, next one. Write the equation line shown on the graph below. Okay, I have 2 points. I can see the slope, but my 2 points. So I have, and I'm going to call them point 1 and point 2. So point 1 is this one, and it's, if I go over 1 and up 1, so it's a -1, comma 1. That's my point 1. Point 2 is here. It goes over 2 and stays there. So my point 2 is 2, comma 0. Okay. So I can see the y-intercept here, but I don't know exactly what it is. So I'm not going to use the y-intercept at all. That's not even a close enough number for me even to think about it. And we're not going to guess because we don't need to. We have the point slope form, and so we're able to use that to help us with our wonderful answers there. Oh, my pencils are acting up. Okay, so now I'm going to write my formula. So I'm going to find the slope first. I always got to find the slope first. So m equals, and I'm going to do 1 minus 0, and I'm going to do -1 minus 2. So my slope gives me 1 over -3. So I'm just going to rewrite it so I like it a little better. So -1/3. Okay, it's negative. You can see the line is negative. You can pick either point to solve this equation. Okay, doesn't matter which one. All right, so I'm going to show it both ways so that you see what it is. So if I choose the first point, so let's choose point 1. Point 1 is -1, 1, and I have a slope of -1/3. So again, using my formula, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x of 1. So I have y minus 1 equals a -1/3. So it's x minus a -1, which again is a positive, okay? Now again, it doesn't matter, it's just a matter which one you use. Sometimes you'll use one over the other, okay? So when I clean that up, it's going to be y minus 1 equals -1/3 times x plus 1. So that's one equation. That's using this point. Now I'm going to use point 2. Point 2, where's all of a sudden my... So point 2, I have 2, 0, and then my slope is still the same. I'm not changing it. So again, write my formula. So it's y minus 0, okay, because that's what y is. So -1/3 x, sorry, parentheses, x minus 2. Now, I'm going to tell you, you're going to clean this up. Y minus 0 is just y, okay? I think some on your solution, like on your answer keys might have it. I haven't changed them from when they were written before that part, but you're going to take out that 0 and it's going to look like that. So again, 2 ways. Either one's right. You do not have to show it both ways. You just only have to show one unless it says so. Okay, last page. Most of the time again, we're still writing equations. You're going to give them different situations, so this page is going to do a little bit more of that. So we're going to write an equation line that passes through 2 points. Okay, so I always have to find the slope. Find the slope, find the slope. So first thing you want to do is find slope. Okay, I have an x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, so my slope is going to be equals 10 minus a negative 2 divided by 2 minus 5. So 10 minus a negative 2 actually becomes plus plus. So we wind up with 10 plus 2, which is 12, over 2 minus 5, which is negative 3. Simplify that, and we get the slope to be a negative 4. So M is negative 4. Okay. Now just choose one of the points. I'm going to write both points in my, I'm going to show both of them, but it doesn't matter which one you do. So this is going to be point 1, point 2 for reference when I give the solution. All right, so point 1, we get 5, negative 2, and that's the slope. So y minus a negative 2 equals negative 4 times x minus 5. I didn't write my slope formula, but that's what I need to do. The point slope formula, clean that up. So that just becomes y plus 2 equals a negative 4 times x minus 5. Please make sure that's in parentheses on that x minus 5. Okay. So the second equation that you'll have using the other point, so for point 2, I'm going to use this one here. So point 2. All right, so again, it's y minus 10 equals, the slope is still, let me write over here, is still negative 4 times x minus 2. Again, you don't have to distribute, just leave it like that, okay? All right. All right, so this next one, I have a graph. If I look at a graph, that's where I really get to write equations of the lines with using slope-intercept form. I do not know why my pen gets bold and it gets light. So on here, if you look at it, I do have a b. So my b is negative 2. And then I just got to find the slope. So if I go from, and one thing, when they give you a point and a point that you see, so when you see that point here up to this point, that's going to be the one that you know for sure you want to go from that point to the other point, because they gave it to you saying these are the 2 points you really should use. They're nice, pretty points. So I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, and over 1. And that was all positive, up and to the right. So my slope is 3 over 1, and we're just going to use 3. Get rid of that the way that we had there. So I plug in, remember x and y stay the same variables, and I plug in everything else has numbers. So the slope is 3x, and my b is a minus 2. And there's my, sorry, got this point 2. Okay, all right, let's look at this one. Write the equation of a line that passes through the point negative 2 and negative 2, 3, and is parallel to this one. So if this is one line and this is another line, okay? So this is my slope for line 1 is negative 4. If they are parallel, then the slope for line 2, which is what I need this information for, must be also negative 4. Slopes are the same. So I use point slope formula. So I have y minus, and I'm going to use, I only have 1 point, 3, equals a negative 4, okay, times x minus a negative 2, okay? And so again, that's going to go plus, plus. And so this is line 2, all right? This is my second line. So it's y minus 3 equals negative 4x plus 2. Okay? So that's for the parallel one. Now again, I'm going to use the same thing. I'm using, look, notice the same equation and the same point. But this time it's perpendicular. So I want the negative reciprocal. So if I'm saying that line 1, the slope here for this one is negative 4, then the slope for the second line is the negative reciprocal. So I flip it over and take the opposite. So it has to be positive. The reciprocal of 4 is 1/4. Negative reciprocal. Sign should be different. So again, one thing nice, I've already written this equation right here. All I'm changing is the slope. So it should be the exact same line because I'm using the same point. So I can use that here, do y minus 3, change my slope though to negative 1/4, excuse me, positive 1/4, apologize. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, I'm just like writing that all wrong. Let me move it over. So we're doing, why does it keep going to 1/4 times x plus 2. Apologize about that. I was having a little issue with figuring out my pen. So that's the perpendicular one, okay? So again, I was able to use the same line there because, or same equation, everything is pretty much the same since I am using same point, the same line that they're asking us to go through. Oops. Okay, next one. Write an equation line that passes through the points 3, 8, and 3, 2, negative 2. Now, we talked about this earlier, and we're looking at the slope. If I look at the slope, I can still find my point. So if you're not wanting to use or think about anyway, but just writing using the formula. So I'm going to have my slope will be 8 minus negative 2, doesn't matter which one I use, and then 3 minus 3. Well, 8 minus negative 2 is actually 10 over 0. So this slope is undefined. So my slope is undefined, but I still have to write an equation. So remember we talked about earlier that undefined slopes were vertical lines, okay? Earlier we talked about slope of 0 was horizontal one. So all you want to do, you still have to write the equation, but look at the information you're given, okay? What number is repeating? The 3. Where's the 3 at? In the x part of the problem. So all I need to do is tell you that my formula is, or my equation is, x equals 3. Okay, that's one way to do it. If you're confused about what it looks like, you're not sure, you can plot those 2 points. So if I plot these 2 points, I'll do it in a different color, on a graph. So 3, 8 is roughly here, okay? Okay, and then the other point is 3, negative 2. Sorry, I had somebody walk in. And if you notice that these points have to be going this way. I have to be able to connect them between here and here. So that means I'm crossing the x-axis at 3. So my equation has to be that, okay? 2 ways. Do the slope. If you have an undefined slope, then you know you must have this kind of line, which is vertical. Vertical, vertical, vertical. Okay, graph it if it doesn't make sense still, but you can say what the slope is, but I need to know what the equation is. All right, next one, same kind of idea, but this time if you notice, my my point has something repeating that negative 2. That's in the y place, okay? So therefore, this is just going to be, obviously not the one above, but if you find the slope formula, so m equals negative 2 minus a negative 2 divided by 3 minus 5, you're going to get 0 over a negative 2. Okay, get that? That's going to be a slope of 0. So m equals 0. So that's just a slope. I want the equation. So again, if I remember that, if this above here is undefined and it's x equals, so this has to be a y equals. And again, the y notes y, it's repeating here at -2, which is in the y place. Okay? All right, 2 more. Write the equation line that has an x-intercept, so that means I have a 0, a 5, comma 0, and I have a 0.23. Okay? So what you have to do here is you have to find the slope. Always find the slope. So my slope will be 3 minus 5, 3 minus 0, and then 2 minus 5. Okay, do that. You wind up with a positive 3 over a -3, which is just -1. So now, use any point. I'm going to use this one because it's just got a 0 in it, but again, I use my point slope formula. So I have y minus y1. Well, y1 is 0, so it's y minus 0 equals, my slope is a negative. We're just going to put a negative there, not -1. We're just going to put the negative. The 1 is understood. And then we're going to do x minus 5. So again, if I clean this up, I get y equals negative x minus 5. Okay? And then the other one you would do, you'd do the slope of 2,3, the 0.23, and still have the slope of -1. And that equation, that equation would be y minus 3 equals a negative just like this, not a -1, x minus 2. Both of these are possible answers. Again, you do not have to do both of them unless I tell you which point to pick. All right, this last one. Write the equation line that passes through the point 4, 5 and is parallel to the x-axis. This one, the first thing you want to do is draw a picture. Okay, you don't have another point to tell you the slope is, but if you draw a picture, so I do this, and I'm saying I have a point at 4, 5, so this is roughly 4, and up here is about 5, so that point is right here. Okay, now that point, though, the line that goes through it is parallel to the x-axis. So I have to draw it parallel to x-axis. That means I got to go in this direction. So this is like 2 parallel lines here. Okay, so when it looks like that, then that's a horizontal line. Okay, so that means it has to be that y value, and you get y equals 5.